So I was kind of in a group where everyone was really good at something. I was kind of like okay at everything.
I feel for me personally that men really need a purpose and like a place in the world.
I'll tell you kind of like an interesting story. The year before, I was actually
And I kind of realised that realistically, if you look back over like my last 5 years of business, a lot of that time was spent in my mum's kitchen.
I still think a job title can sometimes sound better than being a business owner.
And I think that nowadays, something that I think that a lot of kind of coaches need to learn is that
For me, like the best managers, coaches aren't the ones necessarily with the best tactics and strategies. It's like, how can you make that individual perform?
the thing that you see a lot of coaches get wrong, like what would you say is like one of the core elements that you think, you know what, actually if we worked on this or avoided this, then actually you'd see a lot more success?
So one, I think, would be
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Raw Talk podcast. Today we've got a special guest on, Conor. Conor, mate, it's really good to train with you earlier. Obviously, I know we've been speaking a fair bit off camera about, you know, business and investment and all kind of different things. But for those of you that don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself to the podcast, and we'll crack into it, mate?
Yeah, cheers. Appreciate you bringing me on, and welcome to Dubai as well.
Thank you, mate.
So
Appreciate
good to have you here. So my own name is Conor Carlson. So basically got into the fitness industry from my own fitness business, Accomplish Fitness. Started back in like 2017. So one of kind of the OGs in the online space. You know, there's a few people around at that stage, but it was still quite new. So had a few years of online where it's just really like a part-time gig for me. I was actually doing a bachelor's in sports science in university. And I never really saw, maybe from like a belief standpoint, but I never really saw it becoming like a full-time business. So it was very much like go to university and have a bit of a side passion.
Yeah.
I remember I finished my master's in 2019, and I was actually looking for a graduate program and decided to kind of just go full-time with Accomplish. I don't know what made me do it. I think it might have been like family members or whatever that kind of. There's actually the graduate program I was going to do. My uncle, he knew someone who did it, and he was basically saying like, you're not going to have time for yourself. And I remember being quite offended at the time, but it planted a seed for me to be like, okay, I need to look what to do. So I decided to give Accomplish a chance. Went full time with that, and then have recently started. Well, I say recently, probably 18 months ago, I started business coaching. So basically taking the success from my own fitness business and allowing coaches to kind of like learn from me and for me to guide them, to help them on a similar path. So that was quite a long introduction, but that's
That's good to know. That's good to, and you know what? Complete transparency for me, right? I think when did I reach out to you? I think it was earlier on this year that I reached out to you.
Yeah.
You know, got good, like really good vibes. Not to flirt with you or anything, but got really good vibes with you. And I like to connect with people that I feel like are just down to earth, give a shit about the industry, give a shit about coaching. You know, that like they've got kind of morals and ethics and whatnot. And I thought prior to everything you just said there that you'd been actually in the business coaching space and the mentoring space far longer than 18 months. Yeah, I did. Because I think that, and this is something we were talking about earlier off camera, is kind of having that level of confidence where you don't feel like you have to prove yourself, you don't feel like you have to prove a point.
Yeah.
But one thing I'd love to find out actually, was there ever a moment in your life where you felt that way? Because you mentioned about kind of the rugby days and kind of, I guess, getting into that because someone else said, gave you the nudge to say this would be good for you. Like, do you ever feel like you had to live up to any kind of expectation?
Definitely. I think for me, my friendship group in school, I was in a group of people who were all quite talented at some specific area. So, you know, I had a friend who was like one of the best rugby players who was getting trials left, right and centre, maybe for the Irish team. I had someone going to England for trials from Ireland for football. So I was kind of in a group where everyone was really good at something. I was kind of like okay at everything. So I felt I almost I wasn't standing out for any reason specifically. Like I was okay, I was a likable person with my friends, but I felt I was missing something. So that's essentially when I kind of started the gym, because I was like, you need to be consistent, you need to work hard, you need routine. They were things that I had. So I was like, okay, let me be that guy. Like, let me be the guy who's going to be the fittest, or going to be the strongest, or going to have the most muscle. When we were like 16, 17, 18. And that's kind of how I ventured into the gym becoming more of a passion for me. I was like, suppose I wanted to be something more than what I was, and that kind of like pushed me down that path, because I was like, hey, this is something I fully believe I can be the best at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting, man. You know what? I find we spoke earlier actually about the difference between coaching men and coaching women.
Yeah.
And one thing that I do find that I would say stands out to me as a big difference of that, and I feel like whether it be friends or mentors or clients or whatever, is that I feel for me personally that men really, really, really need a purpose and like a place in the world.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like actually a big kind of element of you kind of stepping into that and being like, let me be that guy. Do you found that obviously because you wanted to be that guy, and I can relate to that a lot actually, just because of like past experiences and wanting to turn around.
It's kind of validation, isn't it? I think as men we do need validation.
Totally.
Like even in a relationship, speaking to one of my friends, and like the importance for men, for most men in a relationship, definitely me, to actually feel validated is like really, really important. So yeah, going off topic, but yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think like it. I think that's one thing that appeals to me, and because I remember you said to me that you were born in America, right?
Yeah.
You're born in America. One thing that appeals to me about traveling to another country and living somewhere else is that you get the opportunity to become whoever you want to become, and that to me is really appealing.
Yeah.
Because and I've spoken about this on previous podcasts. Like I've made the list of mistakes I've made. Like you could write a book on it, but at the same time, it's just looking at that for what it is and saying like, okay, well, how do I move forward from this? How do I grow from this? You know. There's a famous saying actually by a golfer, his name's Seve Ballesteros, and he was interviewed after basically having a terrible tournament at the Open, which is like the biggest tournament of the year. He like missed the cut by an absolute mile, and he was expected to like win the tournament, and they were kind of interviewing him, and he was just seemed really happy about it, and they were kind of a bit like perturbed and for like, you've just missed out on the cut. Like what? He was like, well, he was like, I can't lose. I either win or I learn. I remember hearing that and thinking, yeah, you know what, that really resonates with me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, again, I was saying this to some friends last night. I'm far from perfect. I remember when I worked with Ben, a mentor beforehand. He said to me, he was like, "You're far from squeaky clean, but that's you, and you need to just be that and show that." And hence why I record the podcast so people can get to know myself and other business owners and things like that. I think so. Talk us through being born in America. You then went to live in Cork, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, what then drove the decision to say, right, Dubai is going to be the place it's going to be for me?
Yeah, I think it probably came from maybe even a period of kind of like isolation in terms of from a social standpoint. So I think in Cork and Ireland at the weekend, it was very much like go out and drink and socialise. I don't really have much to do. Like you might see a few friends in the gym. So found that it was kind of like a lot of weekends of not really socialising, not having much to do. And then Dubai kind of appealed to me. I saw a few coaches there. Obviously, the weather, tax reasons. I could, to be fair, probably before I knew, I didn't actually completely understand like the social dynamic. But when I was able to visit there and saw like, geez, you can kind of go out on a Saturday night, go for food, maybe go for a shisha, and it's not just involved in like partying and that. It appealed to my personality type quite a lot. So yeah, I think it was probably the social perspective, definitely weather, and definitely the tax. They're probably like the three biggest things.
That makes sense, man. That does make a lot of sense. And how, well, like, can you remember back? Was it 4 years ago you said you moved?
Yeah, nearly 4. So
nearly 4 years ago. Okay.
4.
Oh, so that was right after kind of like all the lockdowns and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that was definitely a big driving force as well. So to be honest, the actual first reason I flew over was actually because of a lockdown. So I remember it was sitting down for a meal Christmas Eve, and it was basically just announced in Ireland that it was going to kind of go back into lockdown again. I was actually starting prep for a show in April. We had like a full YouTube series planned, etc. And I was like, I'm just not staying here. I wouldn't consider myself a spontaneous person, but I booked a flight to Dubai quite spontaneously one way. I think it was there like January 2nd, January 3rd. And then it was actually initially for for 1 month, but it was at the time when you can just change your flights without any hassle. So then moved it to mid-Feb, then moved it to end of February. Then I was getting a call from my mom saying, there's going to be a shutdown. You'll have to like go to quarantine hotel. So eventually decided to go back the start of March. But I was like, I'm moving, like 100% moving. So all of March, kind of packed up the apartment, sold the car, got the business set up in Dubai. And by April 2nd, my birthday's April 3rd, by April 2nd, I was back in Dubai full time and kind of pretty much been here since.
Yeah, amazing.
So it was kind of like there to see how it was and just escape Ireland for the lockdown, and then deciding that's where I wanted to to be, and made me make the move.
Love that, man. And it takes a certain type of person. It's like that entrepreneurial spirit just to go, fuck it, I'm just gonna fly and just see what happens. You know.
I do think as well, like what's important. Like I would say, lucky is the wrong word because I don't want people who don't have the ability to say that they're not lucky. But like I didn't really have any responsibilities in Ireland at the time, so I think it came at a good time in my life to do it. Yeah. Do you know, I was renting an apartment. I owned a car, so literally the only thing I owned to sell was a car. Do you know, I didn't actually have a pet. I didn't have a kid. Didn't have a house. Didn't have any of that. So I didn't really have any huge commitments. So that's why sometimes when people push a narrative about moving somewhere, I'm not someone who like shouts from the top about it because I understand not everyone has the opportunity for that. So how I speak, I always try think about people in different situations and what they're going through. So instead of me saying your environment's important, UK shit, Dubai's amazing, it's instead like, okay, your environment can be like who you surround yourself with, who you speak to, what communities you're in. It doesn't necessarily have to be where you live. I think that's important because not everyone has the same opportunity or...
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you said there, mate, it's important to get perspective on that because we were saying earlier in the gym, like my best friend, his name is Darren. He's from Dublin, Ireland. Unbelievably down to earth. Like I love the guy to pieces. And he was almost somebody who wanted to support me with a move, and obviously what we've planning to move here in January. But there was a moment where he kind of turns to me and said, "Right, George, you're talking about environment. You're talking about like starting things over and everything else." He said, "You can do that in London. Like you can do that if you want to do that." And it kind of I appreciate that kind of insight because I think that it's easy to surround yourself with like yes men who will say, yeah, go do the thing and everything else. And it was recognizing that at that point. I mean, I don't really throw the word around too willy-nilly, but I realized that actually I was in almost a privileged position to say, okay, I've got the finances to either stay here or make that shift.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, would you say, like looking back over the last 4 years, is there anything that you would kind of change from that? Like, would you have done it sooner or left it off? Or I mean, how have you found living here the last 4 years? Like, what would you say has been the highlights for you?
Yeah. Well, one thing in terms of like, do I feel it was the right time to move? I'll tell you kind of like an interesting story. The year before, I was actually planning to move, and it was probably like January and February, just before kind of 2020 COVID happened. So like the start of it, I was like ringing people up in Dubai. Accomplished, wasn't doing huge numbers at all then. Like it was quite conservative, and because I only had owned like 50% of the business, I remember ringing guy in Dubai and I was like, told him how much we made for the year, and I could see he kind of had hesitancy in his voice about like making it work over here, and it was something I really wanted to do, but because I knew it was only part-time so far, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm telling you a figure, but like that was a part-time figure. I know like if I get to Dubai, I'll figure it out, whatever. Anyway, so like that was a potential option. Then the March 2020 lockdowns happened, so ended up not moving to Dubai. Instead, I used the money that I was going to use for Dubai into my first ever business mentor. Okay. And that like changed the game for me. I just remember those like, especially those first 6 months of like, I was like, geez, I don't have anything to do any day, but I feel I have no time because I was just like working relentlessly. So it ended up kind of working in the best way possible for me of like stunting the move to Dubai, almost having this period where I could just like double down. I probably didn't even know I was in like a growth phase. Like I wouldn't have even known what that was at the time, or like, but subconsciously that was happening and I was just working for it. And then being able to move, pretty much 12 months later, being in a completely different position, probably 3-4x more in terms of the business, it ended up working perfectly from that perspective.
Yeah, I love that, man. Because we were saying earlier about like kind of what's our opinions on, if someone starts earning money, like where should they invest it and should they treat themselves and all these different things. And me and Michael were actually talking off camera earlier about the fact that, we were kind of reflecting back over the last few years of business and things like this. Yeah. And I kind of realized that realistically, if you look back over like my last 5 years of business, a lot of that time, I'm not afraid to admit this, was spent in my mum's kitchen building the business from the fucking kitchen table. Yeah. And I remember having consultation calls and there's dinner being cooked on the right hand side of me, and I'm just like, this is just my grind phase, I guess. And in hindsight, like, maybe could have shifted out here earlier or moved the business sooner or all these different things. But I'm so grateful for the fact that the way I view business, right, is you're going to pay either way. You either pay with your time, as in it's going to take you longer to get to a particular goal, or you pay financially and then you just make it work. Yeah. And it sounds to me like, and I think that this is, again, there's a certain mindset that is required for this. And I think that any business coach or mentor has this quality. Yeah. And it's the fact that you're willing to back yourself in the corner and just make it work.
Yeah.
And that's what allows you to almost become that aspirational character for your clients, because they can look at that and go, when shit hits the fan, I know Conor's got my back. Or when shit hits the fan, I know George's got my back, or whatever it may be. So where would you say that work rate comes from?
It's a good question. It's funny because I always, you know how for a lot of people growing up, it's almost a case of like maybe feeling like they have to prove a point to, I know we talked about proving a point, but more so to like a family member, maybe feeling like they haven't got opportunity and trying to make it work for themselves. I'd almost say for me, it was like trying to prove my parents right. Like I had a great childhood growing up. They gave me a lot of opportunity with school. You know, when I was 17, they helped me do a personal training course. Like they helped me manage those things that I wouldn't have been able to afford at that time by myself. So I think it's actually for a thing of like, I want to prove my parents right. The work they put into me, the time they put into me, the support they gave me, I want to almost make it seem worthwhile to them. Like I see some kids or whoever, and they kind of throw it back in their parents' face. So I'm like, I want to make you proud in terms of you did a lot for me. I want to show you that was worth you doing, and then I can give it to you back in the future as well.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I think like wanting to do someone proud is such a like powerful thing. I think that the even like if we look at just coaches, if someone has hired a coach and they build that kind of relationship with them where they want to do them proud, they're just going to be infinitely more successful. And I think that, would you ever say that you felt, because you'd had that great support, and because you'd had that network there, and because your parents had kind of, I guess, begun to pave the way for you for your successes, was there ever any pressure attached to that for you?
It actually wasn't, genuinely, not a huge amount. The one thing, they had this weird like trust in me that even if I didn't get good results, they knew I tried hard for it. So that there wasn't actually a pressure of like outcome. There was probably a pressure in terms of process of like doing the work, like make sure you at least work hard. But to be fair to them, they never had a specific pressure on me in terms of outcome. Maybe, to be fair, I probably would have preferred a bit more pressure with sports. There to be very much like do what you want, like it's up to you. And I'd have probably, like looking back, preferred a bit more pressure, maybe to perform better from a sporting aspect. But no, I think probably where I noticed the most amount of pressure was that decision of going to university to my undergrads, doing a master's, and then deciding to do a business full time instead. So I'm like, okay, I literally went to school for however long, did a 4-year bachelor's degree, did a master's degree, have all this to kind of go down the normal route of probably what they would have preferred at the time, to decide, be like, no, I'm just going to do my own business. So that's probably where I felt pressure, because I was like, I don't want to leave all that hard work and everything they've put into that to kind of go to waste, let's say.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds to me like that was almost like a defining moment where you almost stepped out, because previously to that it was like, okay, well, rugby would be great, and then you did rugby, and it was like, this would be great, and then you did this, and it was like, actually no, this for me now is, because I remember listening to a podcast that you did where I think, wasn't there like a defining moment in 2014 where you made that big shift?
Might have been 20, wouldn't have been as early as 2014, because I'd just been finishing school and going into first year university.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So might have been more, that would have been like 2018, 2019 kind of time around. And yeah, probably limiting belief in myself, limiting belief for my family in terms of like, especially because at the time I was kind of quite focused on bodybuilding. Like I even remember an uncle of mine in America being like, there's like, you can't just help bodybuilders, like you won't have a business there, which is fine. Like I don't think anyone really understood, even myself, where online coaching would get to. But yeah, it was probably like making that decision was where I felt the most amount of pressure, because even still, I think, I don't know if you come this, I still think a job title can sometimes sound better than being a business owner, because like anyone can kind of say they're a business owner for a sec. Because even like my mom sometimes will say like, oh, do you know, so and so has a great job up in Dublin. He's doing X, Y, and Z. And it's almost because it has that title, it has that prestige. And you know, I'm living in Dubai with 2 businesses and could be doing a lot more in terms of, you know, salary, income, etc. But it's still that prestige of a job title that I think, I don't know if you get that.
No, I completely get that.
Yeah.
I completely get that. I think almost having that prestige of a job title almost feels like that's kind of like the safety of when someone says, what do you do? And you're like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm this, I'm this. you know, even now I had someone say to me even a few weeks ago, it's like, oh, what do you do? And I was kind of explaining it, and they were like, oh, so you kind of do like workout sessions on Zoom? And I was like, yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
People just like didn't quite get it, but no, that's cool, man. And I mean, like realistically, if we kind of go back to 2017, that's when you kind of started the online business, and I do think that. Funnily enough, I started mine there, and it did start very, very slow. And what I mean by it started slow is because I was doing it alongside my full-time work, and I had no idea what I was doing. The first 12 months, picked up some clients, but because I didn't have any business acumen, no background of that, I didn't know anyone who knew anything about business. I just kind of did what I felt right to do, and was just like obsessively like delivery, which I guess is actually kind of shaped the way that I coach even to today, just like very fulfillment focused. And then it took me a little bit period of time to then hire my own coach and I guess start to kind of build up experience there. So were there anyone in kind of your early days in 2017 that you kind of looked to for inspiration or I guess help pave your way to that success?
That's a good question. I'm just trying to think now who would have been around. I think from a business standpoint, probably not. I think it literally came from, funnily enough, it actually came from a time where I was just itchy to even get a job in like a good gym in Cork. I remember applying for one or two places for a job, like good gyms in Cork, and they're like, no, we're not looking for anyone right now. So it's like, might as well try my own thing. So it's like, imagine getting rejected from a PT job and then deciding to do your own job. There was a few online coaches in Cork, one being Dave Young. He's actually part of Phil Graham's, I think he's kind of CEO of...
it's Davey on Instagram, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, great guy,
yeah. So he had a coaching business called Go Beyond. Pretty sure they were like pretty much like the first person I remember anyway in Cork, and he was doing the whole online thing, killing it. There's a second business, Exceed, who I'm friends with a few of the lads from there, and they were kind of like, it was probably like seeing them and like, okay, there's something happening here, and just trying to kind of enter into that space. I think that was it. But interesting to your point about how you started and how I started as well, being like, all I cared about at the time was like results. I was like, it was nothing about money at all. It was literally like, I know how good fitness has made me feel and changing my physique. I'd love that for other people. And interestingly enough, and I'm sure you get it as well, sometimes I get an inquiry for business coaching and they almost say in like an embarrassed way that like, oh, do you know, like it's pretty much like referrals and results. Like I don't really have like a system, or I don't really have marketing. I'm like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you know, it's better you saying that to me than you saying to me like, oh, I have the best marketing strategy, I'm really good at selling, but my coaching shit, my results are shit. Do you know? So I'm like, you're actually starting in a perfect foundation. Like, don't be embarrassed by it.
Oh, 100%. You know, I always think like when a coach comes to me like that, I think, oh, you're literally playing business on easy mode right now.
Yeah.
Because you've done the thing that so many other people are neglecting because of like the shiny objects and everything else.
Yeah.
And you know, I hear a term thrown around a lot is that best known beats best, and I do agree with that to a point. But we were saying about kind of LTV and retention and stuff earlier, and like the fulfillment side of stuff. And I think that, you know, when we have a client that comes to us who got a great base of knowledge, you know, is already a great coach, and realistically, it's just focus their attention on building great relationships and getting great results. That is going to be a business that stands the test of time.
Yeah.
And I think that nowadays, something that I think that a lot of kind of coaches need to learn is that, or that sometimes you have to learn this the hard way, is that you shouldn't be in a rush to build the business as fast as you possibly can at the start, because that is all about, you know, basically gaining your base of clients, whether it be for free, whether it be for cheap, whatever it may be, getting some incredible results, like doing your due diligence, and then being able to kind of like build up from there.
Yeah.
And I guess that's when then you fit in, isn't it? Like with your business, like the style in which you run things is very much targeted more towards coaches that, you know, want to then go on and scale and everything else. So where did that come to, like where did your passion for that particular area or that particular niche come from?
That's a good question. So interestingly enough, like I remember even when I moved to Dubai, like my biggest goal at the time was to be not the biggest, but the best kind of prep coach. Like a really, really good reputation for getting people to stage and world-class results. Whatever happened, my passion for the business side of things just started to away. I probably in a way kind of took a backward step of like, I'm starting to care more about accomplish than about myself. So, you know, me saying that was probably fueled by my ego. Like, I want to be one of the best prep coaches, you know. Whereas then I was like, oh, I don't really care about me, to be honest. I just love this business and I love the potential that it has. And if I can work on this, because I know this is where my strengths are, let me put time and energy into like building the business. So then that got me to a point of like, okay, I'm not doing any more of the coaching, not doing any more of the lead gen. I'm still involved in the sales, but I was mainly kind of like working as the CEO and pulling the strings from that perspective. In terms of how that kind of then got me into helping people, maybe based on the reputation I had. So from probably some people who knew me in Dubai or the UK, I had a good reputation in terms of what I would accomplish. They saw how the business was growing, and they heard from me I wasn't doing any of the coaching, and people not respected it, but kind of took an interest in terms of like that's impressive that you could like build a thing and then take a step back and do it. And just, probably the level accomplished was that in terms of the team we had, in terms of how I changed my role in the business. That probably just went into natural way of like that being the main people that I help.
Yeah. Okay. That
makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally, mate. Completely. I mean, well, in that case then, I don't think I asked you this off camera or in the gym. Where do you see your business heading in the next 5 years?
Good question. Something I actually have in my head, I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes you get ideas and you're eventually going to do a post on it. So it's not something I've done a post on yet. But something for me, I'm like, I usually don't like thinking like that far ahead. And why I say that is, I don't know if you've ever experienced that. Like if you said 5 years ago to me, like what's the 5-year goal? I would have never thought I would have had, 2 investments in property, or I'd have had this, or I would have had that. So sometimes, maybe for me personally, I could underestimate where I could be in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a shorter term goal of like, okay, where am I now? What's the next biggest thing I need to do? When I achieve that thing, how does that then elevate me? What changes in my business? What changes for me personally? And then I just kind of go into this like full new standard of that kind of like next push in my life. Yeah. I don't know if I'm communicating that well, but basically sometimes for me, if I think too big ahead, I'm like, I actually don't know what I want then. But I know short term, these are the few things that will improve me as a person or improve my business. And I know if I continually do that, things will just happen, if that makes sense.
No, I completely get it.
Yeah.
Because like if I look back even to, the last time I was in Dubai as opposed to now was like January, February earlier on this year. And I had a very specific vision and a very specific goal, and I knew what my life was going to be. And then I had like some huge shifts in my personal life, and I kind of came to a lot of massive realizations. And it was almost actually me, just because I'm a very busy mind and I love to work, and like I'm the kind of person that if I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is work. I love it. So almost actually force myself to have more downtime and more reflective time allowed me to almost like redesign where I could see my future heading. And I think just like you said there, it's ironic that actually I asked about the kind of 5-year thing, because I thought, right, by the time I'm X age or Y age or whatever, it's going to be this.
Yeah.
Whereas like even now with this new program, although we've been building out the frameworks of this new program for like 10 months, the delivery of it completely changed 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I went back to my team and I was like, okay, I've realized something huge here that we're missing totally. Let's jump on a call. Let me know your thoughts. And immediately everyone was like, why the fuck did we not see this?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like you were saying earlier actually in the gym, it could be like an event or a conversation or a podcast or something, and there's just that golden nugget and it sits with you, and you allow yourself to reflect on it and you think, wow, like I was so short-sighted to all this other stuff over here. Because realistically, like if we kind of reverse back to, kind of growing up in Cork and kind of going through everything you did there, and then, applying for those gyms. Imagine if one of the gyms were to turn around to you and be like, yeah, we'd love to.
I know.
It would have been completely different. Would have been
100%.
completely different. I even remember getting my first PT job. I got my first PT job out of resentment, right? So what happened was I applied to a few different gyms. One said, yeah, we'll interview you. I rocked up and no one greeted me at the door. So okay. So I waited for 10 minutes, still no one. So I messaged the guy and he was like, oh yeah, I'll be out in a minute. And he came through and he started showing me around, and he turned to me and said, mate, I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm really busy right now. Can you not just come back in a few days? And I thought, okay. So I took it on the chin and I walked outside and I thought, nah, fuck this. So I walked up the top of the high street and I thought, right, the first gym I see, I'm just going to walk in and apply, because I was wearing a suit. I was like, fuck it. And it was Pure Gym in Sutton. And I walked into the front door and the guy answered it. And I was like, you're right, mate, you looking for any PTs? And he was like, funnily enough, we are. So he showed me around the gym, and then that's kind of where it hit off from there. And the guy that said, funnily enough, we are, became the first coach that I ever coached.
No way.
Which was like a really weird turn of events. He just like saw something in me, the fact that I was just willing to just go for it. So coached him, he got a great result. Then a few more of the PTs joined on board. Then obviously where I was posting it online, more people saw it, and it was just that like snowball effect. And I often think back to that and think, if my plan had gone to plan and the first gym I applied to would have taken me on, then would have taken a completely different course. And I think that's why I'm so excited for the shift to Dubai, is because I'm very fortunate to have some incredible people in my life, but I'm also very fortunate, that one skill that my mum passed on, because she's an absolute chatterbox, is that I can talk to anyone about anything.
Yeah.
So hence why I'm doing a podcast. So it excites me to come to Dubai and just chat to people and just, find my way and kind of see what's what. And I don't know, I guess it just opens up new opportunities. And we were saying earlier about kind of going and playing golf and whatnot. And, it's a great sport to get into for that exact reason. But I sit here today and think, like, I look back over the last few years and just think, what the fuck happened? But I'm so grateful for it all,
Do you find there's any bit of you where, like, the success you've had and the growth that you've had, that sometimes you're in a place that you're quite happy and fulfilled at the moment, that it's hard for you to, like, want to change too much in terms of the future, in terms of like goals, like where you want to be, etc. That's something that I've definitely felt like I've dealt with in terms of like how my business coaching is going, my fitness coaching, where I'm living, how my personal life is. Things are in like a really, really good spot that I'm obviously very grateful for. But yes, I'm still excited to continue to make progress. But these like huge overarching goals, I probably struggle to put into my mind more than I would have before. Have you experienced that? Or?
Oh, massively. Like I can say with confidence that there are a few, and these are all things that I've worked on massively this year. But like I can think right now of a handful of like insecurities that I have deep down that I think, okay, I need to actively be aware of that and notice when I am acting out of insecurity. So like a great example of that is because I'm so like family orientated. I mean, I turn 30 next year, and we all know that like, a man's internal clock is very different to a woman's.
Yeah.
But subconsciously myself, it's like, I'm here to work on my business. I'm here to focus on my goals. I'm here to focus on that growth. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, well, George, don't shut away yourself too much because you want to start a family. That's something that's important to you, which is interesting because when I speak to men, I find that typically it's a slightly different scenario, especially in this space. Men typically just want to be like all in on business, all in on work, all in on growth. So for me, I'm kind of, what I'm wanting to do is not shut myself off from the world and actually have people in my circle because like, I don't know how I'd distill it down. I guess all I'm trying to do and create now is a space whereby I have the opportunity, if it arose, to actually raise a family and not create the environment that I had when I was a kid, because I didn't really like have that kind of secure family unit. And I honestly think that's what drives me. I really do. I think the thing that drives me is, we said this off camera earlier, like money's great, but it's not. I don't get out of bed in the morning to think like, oh, let's make some money. It's, can I get myself to a place in my life, to a place whereby I can comfortably provide for people around me, and if I can do that whilst changing the industry, because that's my goal. Like I want to, when I retire, I want people to look at Coach's Corner and say, yeah, George was a net positive to coaches, and he improved their coaching delivery, and he improved their standards, and improved their, like, he always kind of like stuck to his guns and his values.
Yeah.
And I know realistically, there's probably been occasions where maybe it's a marketing strategy where I could jump on and slag someone off or do this. And I was like, I'm not here for that. Like I want to make like an actual genuine difference.
Yeah.
Hence why I'm so keen to network and more like one individual like yourself, and, bring other mentors on podcasts and kind of share their stories, and that actually there's so much more to all of this than just let's scale a business, let's grow stuff, let's earn lots of money. I don't know if that answers your question. I went on a little bit of a tangent there.
It does 100%. Just your point about like other mentors and stuff. Do you find it tough when it comes to like inquiries for your business coaching, when it comes to people who've been like burnt before? Yeah. Like I'm sure it's something you get a lot, like, oh, I want to invest with you, but I'm skeptical because I invested in XYZ.
That's a great question, man. That's a really good question. I think, right, I personally believe we're living in a trust recession. I don't think I've ever experienced, I mean, realistically, I've been kind of dabbling with the online coaching since 2017, then it scaled up and everything else. But I think particularly the last 1 to 2 years, it feels like people need a lot more to be convinced of, okay, this is the guy, or this is the course, or this is the mentorship, or whatever it may be. So I think because of that, what I'm finding is that we would always have this style anyway, it's just the way that we operate things. But the nurturing of a relationship with someone is so much longer and deeper and more intense and more purposeful than it would have been previously. Like I remember, if I go back to like 2018 when things started to pick up, you'd post a banger transformation and you would get 5 inquiries. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Whereas now you post 10 and then someone will be like, oh, actually, that's kind of cool. And I think we've said this actually, like market sophistication has changed so much to a degree where it's like, okay, well, how can I articulate my value without trying to almost be like egotistical and like be an arse about it.
Yeah.
You know? So we do get that a fair bit. We do get that a fair bit. And I think the reason that I mean, I'm not sure. You may tell me otherwise. I feel like I get it so frequently because I've seen how so many mentorships run in the style that we, as in like with the newer coaches. And I think that people assume you join on board, there's a set system, there's a set way, and then you get passed off to somebody else. And we almost wanted to come in and be like, I don't think it has to be that way. And I know that you agree with me on that. Like, it's very, very, very kind of personal to the person.
Yeah, 100%.
But I mean, you may tell me otherwise, but do you find the same thing? Like, you get a lot of pushback with that because someone's had a bad experience?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's just and it's fair enough. And I even put up something today by one of my clients, Paul, and he came to me and he was like so initially apprehensive about joining, and it was because of another mentorship. And I said like it's completely different because you have me. It's like the one-to-one. It's not the group element, and I do think it changes things massively. So yeah, it is kind of a shame, but you know that saying, it's like, don't leave a bad investment burn you twice. So one for the actual bad investment, and then second for the time it didn't allow you to invest again into something better. So I think that comes to like hiring as well, which you spoke about, hiring, investing. Sometimes you need to make that bad decision to then make a better one.
Totally. And I think one area where a lot of people then can become scarred with that is what will happen is they'll have a bad experience and then they'll join somebody else and assume, oh, well, because this was my previous experience, there's a good chance that this won't happen again.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like subconsciously a lot of coaches will then begin to like self-sabotage themselves. This is actually something we ask in our onboarding call. We say, what's your self-sabotage superpower? And I was like, what does that mean? Like, when shit hits the fan, what's the thing that you default to? So like a lot of people could be, they procrastinate, or they doubt themselves, or they compare themselves to everybody else. And it's like, right, now that we know that, as soon as that's beginning to happen, we're going to identify if that's the real reason and then kind of rectify that.
Yeah.
Because I think that, ultimately a lot of us will kind of fall into a certain pattern of behavior, which is often learned through childhood. It'll be like default. We're not really too sure, but like realistically, I think that's why I love the one-to-one element of things. And, we know that realistically, it sounds egotistical, but we could like work with loads more people, but it's like, yeah, but would you still have the same level of impact with doing that? Probably not. It may feel like it because it's like, well, actually, look at all these people we're coaching. But it's like, and it sounds like me and you are very much on the same wavelength for that. If you could help, say, 20, 30, 40, 50 people on like a very personal basis and know that you made a bigger impact, that is going to leave more of a lasting legacy than 200 people at like 30% of what your actual capacity is.
Yeah, 100%. I even say like sometimes with the results I put up, it's like I have a team of 5, with the amount that's going up, but it's just me. And that I think shows how, like, when you give a really good service, when you work in depth with someone one-to-one, the levels that they can achieve. Yeah. And yeah, that's just a huge thing for me now, because I think it's like, when you look at a business, you can look about like improving it from a service perspective, or how can this business get me some time back and maybe scale and make more money. Which a lot of people go down that route, which is absolutely fine. But I think I'm just at a point where there's enough subpar kind of programs right now that get subpar results that, it's our opportunity to stand out on a different level. And that, as we say, kind of leads to a lot of opportunity in the future in terms of
definitely
what you can do.
100%. I think a big element of that as well is, like realistically, if someone was to scroll through your page, the amount of results you can get for the amount of people you work with, it's the, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's almost like looking at like, okay, what's the success rate of this particular program, and that's something that we were always like really keen on back on the kind of online coaching days. Yeah. But I guess pivoting it to online coaching, what would you say now, obviously having done this for 18 months and kind of, business coach or mentored, I guess, these group of individuals, the thing that you see a lot of coaches get wrong? Like, what would you say is like one of the core elements that you think, actually, if we worked on this or avoided this, then actually you'd see a lot more success?
Good question. So one, I think would be, there's so much I could say, but one I think would be interesting, and it kind of comes back to what you said about like trust sophistication. Is that how you phrase it? So a lot of coaches, from my experience, so let's see like leads and potential customers and their audience is like a funnel. So you have top of funnel, You have middle of funnel and you have bottom of funnel.
Yeah.
So middle of funnel and bottom of funnel will be like your warm leads and your hot leads. A lot of coaches will stop getting people in top of funnel, and they will just be speaking to people in middle of funnel and bottom of funnel through their content, through messaging, etc., which is fine. But if the top of funnel dries up, then so will the middle of funnel and bottom of funnel. So I think a lot of coaches are complacent in terms of growing their audience, and they're at a position where maybe their audience is at a certain level, it's not growing. They're messaging people, they're doing content, and eventually that dries over time, and that's where they'll notice they're not growing or they're not improving. So, and I know you spoke about ads. So for me, not that I run ads with every client, but if someone has a smaller audience, the importance for me is like, okay, we need to consistently be getting people in top of funnel. That should be an evergreen process that we have, a new audience coming in consistently, and then being smart enough with our nurturing process, which you mentioned after that, of like, okay, how are we then delivering our content? How are we delivering emails? Do we maybe have retargeting ads set up that go to them? And then it ensures we're always getting new eyes and new audience and potential customers in, but then we're not just relying on, okay, someone's followed you, they're going to trust you. So far they won't. So how are we then nurturing them over time? So yeah, I think a lot of coaches, they're not focusing on top of funnel, which dries everything up. That would be probably one area from like a lead generation perspective anyway.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. And I think that what you said there about kind of, the different layers of that funnel, I think what's very easy to do, and I think a mistake that a lot of people make is, okay, great, do your outreach. But if someone's kind of relying on, say, like a script to just be like, right, let's just send 50 of these every single day. It's like, well, actually, because we know that the market is becoming a lot more sophisticated and realistically, people are getting inundated with these kind of messages every single day. It's like, how do you actually build genuine know, like, and trust with this individual?
Yeah.
And realistically, this is why. And I said this to Michael off of camera. Like, we as a business, had to kind of step back and be like, right, what are we good at, and how can we do more of it? I can talk for England, so I was like, I need a podcast because I'm like, why am I not doing that? I like talking, I like being on camera and all these different things. So it's like, right, let's go into that. And then we sit down with another client who doesn't like talking on camera, who's a little bit more introverted, who's a little bit more reserved. And it's like, okay, well, realistically for your business, okay, right, we do need to, build up your following base. We do need to be looking at your written copy. Okay, do we actually go into email? Because that then allows you to go into the things that you're good at and not, have to play everyone else's game.
Yeah.
And that's like why I love being one-to-one. That's why I love being one-to-one, because no two businesses are ever really going to be exactly the same. And I also am a big advocate of the fact that, tactics for lead gen or whatever it may be, it's like, okay, that's cool and that's shiny and it's, it can get you some clients, but I don't really think that you can build a business off of tactics.
Yeah.
Or at least a business that lasts. You may get some quick wins and, earn some more money and get some clients. Great, that's fantastic. And it can give someone financial security. But if you want to build like a true business that lasts the test of time, it's like, okay, you are your brand. How do we continue to build your brand? And that's why I personally believe, and again, this is going back to like our roots now. A lot of coaches would do themselves a massive favor if one of the first things they did in business is like, how can I become the best human being that I can become? Mentally, physically, spiritually, the whole shebang, as opposed to, okay, let's earn as much money as quickly as possible whilst I sleep like shit, eat like shit, train like shit. My mental health's all over the fucking place. Constantly like reactive and kind of having conversation with people and things like this, which is why I find that actually I gravitate towards a lot of like athletes, a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of people who are kind of like high end in sport, because it's the same applicable skills that you developed within doing that that then last the test of time in business. And it seems to me like you've just been able to do that throughout your career. We've obviously started out with rugby and then passing it on and passing it on.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's always just been, I just love structure and routine at like its complete basic level. So with sport, with the gym, with business, it's always just been, because even like I've never growing up, like, so you'll hear some people say like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like I was actually never, it would be great for me to say like, oh yeah, I've always said I wanted to own my own business and be an entrepreneur. Not necessarily. I just love sport. I love fitness. So I wanted to do something in those fields, but I was never actually massively entrepreneurial, or I thought I was at least. That kind of came more over time and from just getting stuck into passion. And
yeah, mate, I'm the exact same.
Yeah.
It's funny actually, because the first mentorship I was ever in, I remember explicitly like saying out loud, I hate business.
Really?
Really, yeah. I was like, I just don't like it because I didn't. And I think like if I went back in time, I think that it was just because really what happened was I wasn't aligned with the owner.
Yes.
Because I wasn't aligned with the owner, I almost like resented it, like kind of pushed back against it. And then when I then worked on a deeper, more one-to-one basis with then my next mentor, I was like, I fucking love business. This is incredible because I'd found that person I could have that spark with.
Yeah.
So I guess what advice would you have for somebody who is, I guess, looking to begin that process of investing in themselves with finding the person for them? Because it seems to me like me and you both have a real kind of want or need or I guess desire to build a great relationship with our clients. So yeah, what advice would you give someone looking for that?
I think one, for me, it would always be like, invest into someone who's walked the road you want to and has then helped other people do it. So, for you, it's like, okay, you built a really good fitness business. You've now helped people do. And there's more specifics around your journey. Like if someone can look at you and be like, wow, like that's really inspirational. Like that's a route I want to go down. Don't then get sucked into, something else that the person might not even have been in your industry, might not have even done the thing, but they're good at saying it. So I think for me, when I always look to invest in people, it's like, have they done the thing I want to do? And have they helped other people do the thing as well? They'd usually be like the strongest things that I'd look for, I think.
Yeah, totally, man. Like it's a great point. And I think something that I look for now is if I'm ever investing in anybody, like for example, this course, going to be flying my team out to America to go on that few day course, which I'm really looking forward to. But it's, would I want to be this person and would I want to live their life?
Yeah.
Because, I'll shout out Craig on this. I've been working with Craig on a one-to-one basis and he epitomizes everything that I respect in a person, like family orientated, gives a shit, wakes up at 3:30 in the morning, which is crazy. He's the only person I know who wakes up earlier than me. Like I will happily wake up at 4 if needs to be because I'm massively a morning person. But then I do get to now and I'm fucking crashing. but like, I don't know. Like I think that's a mistake that I made previously is I would only be looking at, okay, well, how big can the business grow? What kind of money can be earned? How many clients can I work with? As opposed to, okay, if I was to sit and have dinner with this guy, like what conversations would we have? What are his values? What are his morals? Like, what does he believe in for life?
That's why I think as well. So like, obviously we said the one-to-one is important because every business needs something different, but so does every person.
Yeah.
So like how we coach people, the way we speak to them, what they actually need in their life or what they want in their life is also like a client of mine who scaled from like 15 to 30K a month. And I remember her saying after the 30K, like, she said, like, I need to do this next month. And I said, wait a second. I said, you're earning £30,000 a month.
Yeah.
And like you have the most amazing life built, a really good business. Just like stop for a second and ask yourself, like, why do you need it? Like, great, we can grow, but like make sure we're growing from a place of abundance, not a place from like scarcity. So I think, and then there could be someone else who actually needs a bit more of a kick and they get a bit complacent and they maybe have one good month and they're like, oh, like, let me sit back. And it's like, no. Like, I see a bit of complacency kicking in. Like, we need to, like, continue with this momentum. So it's like, as a coach, it's like, how can you build a relationship with someone, know exactly what they need? And, I take this back to sport as well. For me, like, the best managers, coaches aren't the ones necessarily with the best tactics and strategies. It's like, how can you make that individual perform?
Yes.
Can you bring out their best? And I think that's so important. And obviously that's what you get from one-to-one.
But now, honestly, like we could continue this conversation on and on and on. To be fair,
we're getting kicked out of the studio.
We're going to get kicked out of the studio. To be fair, mate, I'd love to have you back on another podcast. I feel like there's a lot of stuff we could dive into there for sure.
100%.
But for anyone who kind of isn't following you on socials or pages or stuff like that, like where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so mainly on Instagram, Conor_Carlson. So very boring, just my name. And yeah, if you follow me there, you'll see my business pages, and just slowly starting a YouTube channel with some clients as well.
Love that, man. That's incredible. Wait, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. And,
cheers, man.
Guys. But for those of you that have been watching, thank you very much for watching, on listening in even. We're going to be making sure that we pump these out on kind of a weekly basis. And if you've got any questions for myself or Conor, please feel free to DM us on Instagram, and we'll be more than happy to help you out.
Cheers, bro.
Perfect. Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
Great speaking.